we go. I'd love to see it when it says live. Today, welcome everybody to BioBridge, where we try to connect Japan to the rest of the world in the life sciences. And we always have very special guests with us. Today, I'm going to do this one of those announcers at boxing rings. I'm going to say, today in the blue corner, we have Arrambide. Thank you, Stacey, for taking the time with us. I've been practicing that a little bit.
Okay, well, that's great. I need you to just follow me around everywhere I go.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So Stacy and I, we don't know each other for so long. It's just a few weeks, or actually online for a few months. But we
Mhm.
met in Japan in person about a few weeks ago. Stacy is the boss of a good friend of mine in Japan, and part of a CRO called Advanced Clinical. So I'm not going to say too much. I'll let Stacy do some intro himself. And maybe I'll let Ibrahim just say hello to everybody, though. We're
Yeah,
out
yeah,
there.
no, hello everyone again. It's me. No, and thanks Stacy for being with us.
No,
Looking forward
thank
to
you
our
both for having
conversation.
me. This is great. Love this. Yeah, like Tetsu said, we met maybe 6, 8 months ago online, and then we're able
Hmm.
to meet, face to face about maybe almost 2 months ago now. But it's been
Correct.
great. Yeah. So as for myself, I work for Advanced Clinical. We're a mid-sized CRO. Um, and I've been in the CRO industry for all of my career, so just almost 28 years now. I've been doing this a long time. I've worked for small CROs and large CROs, and now at a mid-sized CRO. Global organization within Advanced Clinical. Our Japanese offering reports up through me into the rest of the clinical development operations team. And yeah, just really happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
Fantastic. So, for some of you who've been following us, you'd know that today we're doing something different. We usually have what are called SMEs, so subject matter experts about Japan. They tell us, how to go in, talk to the BD people, talk to pharma people, et cetera, et cetera. Today we're going the opposite route. We kind of got an audience on with us, so to speak. We have somebody who went to Japan for the first time, uh, not just as a businessman, but even as a tourist, because you did some tourism, right? And so we wanted to get like a real fresh look at Japan from a Japano version.
Is that a word? I guess it is now.
It
Yeah.
is now from today, exactly.
And
Yeah.
yeah, just that fresh look. In Japanese, Ibrahim would know. There's a saying we say, "shoshin ni modoru." Shoshin ni modoru means to go back to the first heart, or the first, the beginner's mindset. So that's what I thought. Hey, we just met Stacy. It was a nice meeting in Japan, and it's fresh in his mind. And I wanted to get like all his learning and his insights through the eyes of the beginner. Because I think myself and Ibrahim, sometimes we don't see that anymore. A lot of things. We go to the train station. It's super noisy. People tell me, but we don't hear it. Apparently, all the train stations in Japan are really noisy. But we're so used to it, so we want to hear that again. So that's where we're coming from. Is that good?
No, that sounds great. Well, I can start on a little bit of that. So some
Yeah.
not industry specific, but just like you said, my first time there, walking around downtown Tokyo. This is probably only going to make sense to me, but I think whenever you think about Tokyo, it's very crowded, a lot of people, very busy. All that's true, but it almost felt more like a downtown Philadelphia to me. There was a lot of room. There was a lot of it was things going on. Because when you think of New York, you think of the sidewalks about this big and a million people there, but it wasn't. Everybody was so great. Everybody follows the traffic lights. Nobody jaywalks in Japan. The street is 4 feet across and still nobody goes when it's red. So, but I had a wonderful time there. Everything was very organized. Tens of thousands of restaurants around Tokyo Station. So from that personal perspective, it was just really great. I would encourage everybody to put it on your bucket list for certain. um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So part of the
So far,
why
nothing surprising yet.
nothing surprising yet. Yeah. But I went for two reasons. One, to visit with our team. So we have a team of 15, 20 people, in Japan, and then also to go to the Bio Japan meeting, right? And I would say at a high level, it validated some of the things that my perceptions that I had, and then also sort of it kind of made me think, like, just what's going on. I wish everybody could see this and experience things. If you don't mind, I can kind of just go into a point, and then I'd love y'all's opinion back
Absolutely.
there. Whenever we think about doing clinical trials globally, people say, "Oh, well, you have to do clinical trials in Japan. Japan is, in the top 5 pharmaceutical markets in the world." That's always the first line everybody says. But what does that really mean? And so I went and did some research, and I pulled up 4 different reports on, if you will. And in one of those, Japan was number 4. Another one, Japan was number 3. Another one, Japan was number 2. Another one, Japan was number 5. So it's a clear message, all evidence pointing that way. But when you started to think about it, the population in Japan is a very mature, very compliant. People are living longer. And so that just means the pharmaceutical market, it's already high. It's just going to continue to grow because you're going to have a larger population there. And so it's a longer and older population, if you will. Again, it's just going to grow. And so I think I knew there was volume. I knew you could always get patients there, but just that expansion of it, that really stood out to me as one of the things. So I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's one of the things I see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. People know Japan is a very populated country, but I don't think everybody knows how well things are developed in Japan, the infrastructure, and the level of science. Um, so all that are great things that add to just the sheer number, right? It's not just a huge market. It's very well developed. I mean, Brazil is a huge country with lots of people, but it's not quite as developed in terms of infrastructure for drug development per se, right?
Yeah, yeah, I would totally agree with that. And I have a few points to touch on that. But before I get there, just thinking about the patients, I think at BioJapan, I went to several different meetings and sessions. And one of the things that talked about was the incidence rates of some of these. And so a lot of, gastrointestinal cancers,
Yes.
in there, right? Cardiovascular was a little bit higher than I thought there, but I think it was like a number 2 type thing there, right? And so again, that was just something that caught out to me. So when you think about where to go get patients for clinical trials, and then once you commercialize, again, thinking about this large population that's going to live a long time, like those just really stood out to me and made it more real. It's just like, I get it now. Like you can kind of see that, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Exactly. And because of the aging population, dementia obviously is going to be much, much, much higher as well. The other point I wanted to make about add on to the infrastructure part is access to healthcare. So because the infrastructure, not the clinical trials, but this is access to healthcare. So the number of, going along with the population, this pretty much most of the population will have good access to healthcare, and hence the prescribing goes along hand in hand with that as well.
100%. Thinking about that, there was in 2024, a large CRO put out a report, and I could show you the link, and it talked about, I'm looking at my notes here, like it gave each country in terms of clinical trials like a score in 3 areas: an operational, infrastructure, their clinical infrastructure, and then the patient accessibility. And they rated all the different countries on these different things. And Japan was number 3 overall. Again, thinking about, they do have the infrastructure, they do have the operational infrastructure, the clinical infrastructure. I know while we were there at again, BioJapan, the National Cancer Institute gave up statistics about how many beds they have and how many trials they run and so on. More beds, I think, per capita than any other country in the world. And so there was that strong infrastructure.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the things that was surprising to me that I learned there was there's this drug lag effect, they kept calling it. How medicine's coming over from or being developed in Japan, not as many as it was maybe 5-7 years ago. I'd be interested in, like, I did a little bit of research, so I think I'd be interested to hear from you both on why you think there's this drug lag.
Ibrahim, you want to go? Or?
No, go ahead.
All right. So
Yep.
drug lag, or they even call it drug loss, more recently, because it's not even coming late. It's like it's not even coming in. So we're talking about a list of what 200 or so drugs that are developed outside of Japan that get approved at the EMA, at the FDA level, and they don't come into Japan. Like it's not in preclinical, it's not in clinical, it's not coming in. And the hypothesis behind that is that drugs used to be developed by these big mega pharmas that have a Japan affiliate, and Japan's always been part of the strategy. But then in the past 10, 15 years, most drugs are getting developed by smaller companies, right? They're not concerned with the whole market. They're concerned with getting that first win, whether it's the EMA or the FDA. They just want to go out and get it. And then they don't have the bandwidth to deal with other countries, even Japan, like a huge market, but it's just not in their scope. It's just too much to deal with. It's a black box for everybody. So it's not worth the effort to try to go get it. And as time goes on, some of these companies get picked up by big pharma who says, "Okay, we're going to develop it," and some of them just said, it's already done. It's not worth it to go in now and then run another study, etc. So some of these just get put down, deprioritized, and then before you know it, it's lost on the radar.
Because you need a bridging study most of the time with Japanese patients, or now I guess there's a little bit more latitude in using Asian patients, East Asian patients. So there's that hurdle.
Japan is trying to deal with this problem. They've been talking about this for a while. So in 2023, they lifted the requirements to have PK in Japanese patients before you go into a phase 3. So I think that's what Ibrahim sort of alluding to, is that before you used to have PK before you go into phase 3. So what you used to do is either you run a PK study or you run what is called a run-in study. So you kind of have a PK arm for a little bit, and then Japan joins the main phase 3 pivotal study.
Yeah.
Now many things don't have time for that, and they lifted it in principle. You still have to talk to PMDA and says, "We're not going to do PK. Is that okay?" And then they're going to say it's okay unless you have some sort of ethnic differences in metabolism.
Yeah, for sure. And so that was surprising to me to understand this drug loss or this drug lag type thing. And I agree with you, Tetsu. What stood out to me in my research is that I think, 15, 20 years ago, a manufacturer of the drug, they had a very clear commercialization plan. Submit to the US, submit to the EMEA, submit to the PMDA. That was just the way it is. But now those smaller biotechs or pharma companies that are developing these, they don't necessarily have the commercialization plans in mind. They have let's get our assets someplace and let's get bought, right?
Yep.
And then the large pharmas, they will go to Japan. They go to markets where either they already are, so they can use their infrastructure, or they'll go to some place where they can just make a lot of money there, like they're already there. That's the reality of the situation. And so you don't have that same, submission commercialization strategy, which again, thinking about that, looping back to the population and the incidence rates there and the infrastructure to support all this it was really interesting to learn of, because it feels like there's just a gold mine, literally a gold mine, if you were to take the trials there.
Yeah. A lot of times it just feels like they don't know about it. So I'm trying to see if there's any way I could go out and talk to these companies that are in late phase 2 and then say, "Hey, go for the pivotal. Let's include Japan here. I'll teach it. Let's talk to the PMDA. There's a lead time of 3 to 6 months. Get everything set up. They do your IND in Japan. After the IND, Japan is fast compared to other countries. So that's the kind of thing that once then it's like including Japan is much easier than doing Japan separately after.
Right. And again, that was an education that I got, was that the country and the government and regulatory agencies in Japan have noticed this and they've adjusted. Look at some of the laws there that, like you just said, the startup timelines have just almost halved than what they used to be. And once they did the submissions to PMDA, those timelines have shrunk. And then there's a lot of governmental incentives, financial incentives. Like I think the National Health Organization there's a lot of just incentives there to do the trials there. And I think it's just interesting to watch how the commercialization strategy has gone down and how the country's responded there. Again, I don't know why you wouldn't want to go there.
Yeah, it's kind of like with the 5 past years, the yen really dropped, and that's adding more and more incentives. And now I feel like there's a lot of attention on Japan now, both from the operators and also from investors, and everybody's kind of like rushing in to Japan. That's sort of how I feel. And Japan is trying to be welcoming of that, and also Japanese companies going outside. So this cross pollination, this bilateral, back and forth is getting very, very active, and it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
I love seeing
Well,
this.
and I think the messaging just continues to get out there. I think most people are familiar with the tax incentives that if you have an entity in Australia or run your clinical
Yep.
trials there, but it's the same thing to bridge off of that, right?
Mhm.
It's just to have that data there. And so
Yeah.
since I've come back and learned about these things, the shorter startup time, the financial incentives to do the trials there, and then upon submission, the shorter regulatory review and feedback timelines. Like I tell everybody I know about this. Like it's if you don't
Good.
take advantage of that, I would say
Yeah.
why.
I wouldn't say a lot shorter. It is shorter, uh, but not by a lot. What I would say is predictable timeline for Japan. There's not like you're stuck with a site and you can't negotiate the site budget, and then it just takes on like 6 months with one site. That kind of thing doesn't really happen in Japan. It's very predictable. You know what's happening. Um, so, so from that perspective, I think it's really good. And I would say, do your phase 1 in Australia, and then include Japan into your Asian study, your regional study, and the phase 2. You can get an approval there. Great. If not, your pivotal now has the whole world, including Japan and Australia. I mean,
Yeah, well, back to the whole how commercialization is different there. Even if a small biotech has that molecule that they're not going to commercialize it all themselves, I would think that if it did that a phase 1 in Japan, that would make them a more attractive acquisition. I would just think that they already have that data, so whoever buys them already has a little bit of that data. They don't have to go and do that. That's a strategy that I would consider if I was doing business development for one of these type companies.
Definitely.
it
Yeah,
would be
and then the
good.
other thing I wanted to, oh, so sorry. Tetsu mentioned there's that black box
Mhm.
effect as well, where I think the impression is, when you go to Japan, it has to be in Japanese. You'll be working with kind of a foreign partner, et cetera, et cetera. But if you look, there's people like Tetsu, for example, that are trying to bridge that gap, and there's CROs that already have the know-how, and there are a lot of bilingual talent now, especially nowadays, in Japan. That there's that black box effect is that barrier is much lower. So if you look for it, there's enough help.
Without question, it reminds me of a group that Tetsu's part of, and I apologize, maybe you're part of it too. But this bullhen group, there was 200-300 people that are all having this, and I don't know how many of them were I'll say native Japanese, but there's a lot of people that are just flooding with ideas and trying to connect and network around this. And so I agree with you that everybody wants a piece of this.
It's we're at the beginning of that wave. Oh, I can't wait to get my surfboard on. It's a lot of fun seeing these people, and then I got people, pinging me on LinkedIn every once in a while, and then let's have a talk, and then I talk about their asset, and then think about if you have some sort of a plan to include Japan, then we could get funding. Like there's this funding, like you mentioned, funding is important in Japan. Yeah, there's a very good support infrastructure, including funding that's happening in Japan right now for startups, because this is a whole different can of worms, so to speak. But we talked about drug lag and drug loss, but I also, like to talk about drug less problem in Japan. And that is in the 80s, 90s, Japan was like world leader along with the US. So one out of three new chemical entity came out of the US and one out of three came out of Japan. The rest of the world, shared the remaining third. Today, two out of three comes out of the US. So it's all concentrated into the US. And Japan's like at 7% or something. So there's a dramatic, decline in productivity. So I think it's like a drug less problem. It's like from inside of Japan. Drug lag and drug loss is from outside of Japan. That's not coming in. So it's like a double whammy kind of thing in Japan. So they're trying to address the issues from both sides. And for the drug less problem, this is this fund called the AMED, which is basically the NIH of Japan. So they have a list of 30 odd VCs that's registered with them. So if a VC invests in an asset in Japan, let's say $10 million, AMED will put another 20 million on top of that. So for the effort of raising $10 million, suddenly you end up with $30 million in your bank account to run your asset. So it's a lot of support. It's just unheard of. Every time I talk to an investor, never heard of that. But the best thing I've heard is 1-to-1 matching, which is 2-to-1.
No,
it's not diluted.
Yeah.
Not diluted. AMED doesn't want equity. AMED doesn't want a seat on the board. No control. It's really handout from the courtesy of the Japanese people.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's another area where the country and regulatory agency of Japan has really stepped up. That was another surprise when I was at BioJapan. So when we were there, there was BioJapan, but then they also had like really two other pieces of BioJapan, thinking about just health tech and then this investors type summit there. And it was really interesting for me to see all of these Japanese or other areas in Southeast Asia, these startup companies that are trying to grow. And so I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm from Houston. It's about 3 hours from here. The Med Center, everybody knows MD Anderson, Baylor College of Medicine, TMC is just, they call it the medical center down there. They had a presentation on how they're linking with different biotechs of Japan using, come use our infrastructure. It's an incubator. You have access to all of these physicians, all of these labs, all of these scientists. And that was just one of multiple presentations to put up to combat this sort of drug loss, all these incentives that everybody's trying to help. So again, I do think there's this inertia that is starting. So
indeed.
I had one topic that I wanted to get y'all's opinion on. I think remove for a second the idea that the yen is a little bit depressed there, but I think there's a perception that maybe doing clinical trials in Japan is expensive, right? And I think there's that perception there, and so I have thoughts on that. But like, if somebody says, "Hey, Ibrahim, Tetsu, tell me about this," like, how would you respond to that?
I'd say you're living in 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was actually running clinical studies. It was like by far the most expensive country in the world, because the yen was even stronger than the dollar at the time, and it was very expensive. I had one site, I'll remember this forever. I had one site that required a 100% upfront payment. The investigator said, we're going to find you 25 patients. It's going to be so it was like 1.2 million US dollars at the time. One shot upfront payment. I got a call from our COO. He said, Tetsu, I got this info said you got to sign. Are you sure about this? I said, yeah. I mean, the Japanese people, they're very high integrity, very high honesty, and they do what they say. They don't cheat. And I just signed it. And they recruited the 25 patients earlier than the timeline. and they actually even got an extension and got like 15 more patients or something. So those are the kinds of things, well, at least in those days, was very scary. But Japan is changing a lot. The yen also has dropped. From that time, we're talking about almost half. Okay, from 5 years ago when the pandemic just started, Japan was at parity, about 105 yen per $1. Now it's 155. It's almost 160. So it's like 50% depressed compared to 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, it was even more. So it's like half since when I was running a clinical study in Japan. So these things have changed the dynamic by a lot, like significantly, half. And so, but the quality is still there. So I always say Japan has, first world science and infrastructure and kind of third world pricing.
Basically, like a 33% discount just because of the currency.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not just clinical. I'd sit in these bid defenses maybe a year or two ago, and we've got U.S. vendors and Japanese vendors for this is a non-human primate, 6 month long-term toxicity study, like literally 50% cheaper in Japan.
Yeah.
Same offering, if not even better, I would argue, for these preclinical stuff. English, all the reports for FDA, all standard, and they want the foreign business so much that they even have an in-house interpreter. So I don't see, why you wouldn't take it.
Yeah.
Run your talk study in Japan. It's going to cost you half.
Right. No, I agree. And I think the thing that sort of hit me is that besides the financial market being down there, that I think in general most people will pay a premium for value, for quality,
Yeah.
for standardization there. And so with the yen being depressed, that you get even more of that. But again,
Mhm.
you talk to the investigators, if they say they're going to give you 20 patients by this date, they're going to give you 20 patients by this date. And there are
Yeah,
going to be low screen failure rates and high
that's right.
quality. All of it, they're gonna do what is said there. I think again, paying for consistency, paying for higher quality, some brand there. Everybody would pay a little bit more for that, right?
And cheaper. Yeah,
And it's a little bit cheaper. But even if it wasn't, I think people would still pay for that there, right? Otherwise, why does
absolutely.
Starbucks exist? It's a cup of coffee.
That's right.
It's, you know,
Yeah, you're right.
right? And so I think that was something that, again, I knew it intellectually, but just kind of seeing it there and talking with some of the
Yeah.
investigators and the sites and the
Yeah,
teams.
I mean, obviously, this is in every aspect of life, not just work or clinical
Hmm.
development. Just buying a meal in the streets, you
Hmm.
see the quality that you get for the price, right? So
Yeah. Ah,
it's absolutely the case. And also one thing that we didn't touch upon, and that is inflation. Like yen dropped, yes, and Japan did not have you know uh, 8, 9, 10% inflation a year. It
right.
was like 2.5 during the pandemic,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that was like a huge inflation for Japan. Like
Right.
last time I went, I now finally saw that some things are a little more expensive.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, it was my first time, so I don't know. I'll have to take your word for it. But I think from what I saw, everything was quite affordable there. And then again, some of these, even if it was a little bit higher than you would think, that there's a premium on quality, a premium on the value that it brings and the consistency. So
Did you
Yeah,
miss
indeed.
tipping in Japan?
I did not. Yeah, let's not get started on that. But
Yeah.
because everywhere else it seems like it's just crazy, or maybe in the U.S. But no, it was great there. It was great. My
So
favorite
that
part besides Bio Japan was I made it to a Giants versus Dragons baseball game.
Oh,
That
nice.
was I encourage everybody to do that. That was incredible.
oh,
Sounds like fun.
the
I've not.
cheerleaders, but the male cheerleading band, right? Like the with the
Man,
big drums and
yeah, I haven't been to a European soccer game, but or a soccer game like in LATAM, but that's how I envision like their fans are just so frenzied all the time there, right? And so the baseball game there in the Tokyo Dome, it was what I would say American baseball, but with like this European or Latin American soccer feel to the fans. It was screaming. It was so loud the whole time. It was a wonderful experience. Put that on your bucket list for sure.
Yeah,
Nice.
indeed. It's going to cost you a fraction of the price of a Major League Baseball game, too.
For sure. Well, there's no question about that for sure. Yeah. So yeah, so those were the kind of things that I had that I really got there is just the infrastructure, the patience.
Yeah, from a clinical operations perspective or CRO, mindset. Sure, before going, you had, I'd like to know one thing that shocked you the most. Like, I thought it was going to be like this, but it's completely different. Is there one thing that's really notable that you had a preconceived notion of how it's going to be, and it's turned out to be different, very different?
You stole my question, Tetsu.
Oh, actually, Ibrahim has a question for you.
Well, I can answer that. And hopefully this doesn't come across as a bad thing for America or Europe, but the direct involvement of the investigators, they are very, very involved there. I mean, they have support staff there, but in talking with our team and working with sites, the investigators are very, very involved. That's not to imply that they're not other places of the country, but it was surprising just like how involved they were into the clinical trials they were.
Well, that's good to know. That's good. It is true, and also I would add that they're not. I don't want to say this in a bad way, but now they're not money driven, as in because the contracts don't go to them anyways. you know. Oh, so when you want to find out if things are going well, or, I mean not going well, you go to talk to them, you try to motivate them to do things. It's not with money. It's not like, oh, if you enroll this many, we'll add this much more. Like that kind of incentive structure doesn't work well in Japan. Um, it's more like you'll bring more information, you'll print more articles, and say, oh, this is the newest thing that just came out. Please read this. You do that service thing where you print everything else, file it in, and make it easy for the investigator to see. There's also things like a little bit of competition between the sites. You go, wow, we have 10 sites, and here's the enrollment of the 10 sites, and you go, hey, we have to beat site E or things like that. But it's not money driven, so it's very hard to control from a sponsor's perspective.
Yeah, I would validate that. The motivation is for the betterment of the people, the betterment for the population,
Indeed.
the betterment of the science. Absolutely, that was. And again, not that other parts of the world aren't like that as well, but it seemed a little stronger presence there.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are the type of things that a Japanese clinical operations team would have to learn as they go up the ranks as a CRA and they go to talk to the investigators. It's that pecking order, right? In the societal pecking order. And investigators are very, very high up in the societal rankings, and the way you approach them is very different compared to the U.S. or anywhere else in the world, really. Of course, most of Asia, yes, there's a hierarchy. Japan and I would say Korea are two of the most, vertically set up, I think.
Yeah, I would validate that. In between the time that I went to Japan and today, I was interacting with a customer, a pharma customer, that it was their first time in Japan, and they weren't getting the responses they needed from the sites, and so they went and did a visit and spent time with them, and then they just remarked on it's night and day now because you've invested the time to meet with the investigators, to meet with the staff. It's very personal for them, right? And it's completely different experience now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sites in the U.S. are like, yeah, don't come. We know this. We know the protocol. Don't come. In Japan, it's like, well, there's something. Come check this out. Or they're like, hey, well, I just got an AE. How should I report this? They're very dependent on the CRAs. That's why in Japan the site management time is very high compared to elsewhere in the world. It's part of the quality. It's part of the service. That has to be priced in.
Again, I agreed with you. It is part of just the quality, the standardization, the care of what's going into it.
So Stacey, what were your takeaways from your trip? Like, where do you think you'll go from here or from there? I guess the experience.
Yeah.
The overall Japan strategy and the whole.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. A lot of the things that we had talked about is just recognizing that the infrastructure is so strong there. That from the hospitals to the regulatory to the financial incentives, that whole infrastructure is very strong, and trying to spread that, and again give a little bit of some examples of the what do you mean, like, and be able to answer some of those things, and and to drive home the impact of the quality and the care that goes into this. I would say any studies in Asia Pac right now, like Japan should be in it, Australia strong, South Korea strong. From what I saw, those are the top 3 countries for sure, that they have all of these things that we're talking about there. And in the PMDA, again, their reviews, etc., they're looking out for good science, and they'll take care of good science for the betterment of the patient population.
Indeed.
So those are the kind of things that when I talk to people now and they say, well, tell me about it. What did you learn? It's just like great infrastructure, great patients, good regulatory environment, financial incentives, and just continue to reiterate those.
Great.
Give me one thing that Japan should improve on.
One thing that Japan should
Only
improve
one?
on. Only one.
Ten.
Oh,
No, but we constructive criticism.
Yeah.
We can come up with a few.
Great question.
Okay. Japan should learn.
I didn't care for the sea urchin.
Oh man,
That's a first.
my CEO would not like that. He
loves.
all he did was eat like sea urchin in Japan, apparently, like everywhere. So.
Let's see what would be an area for improvement there. I'd have to think about that. I don't want to start a controversy and go viral here or anything like that. But
if you can go viral, that's pretty good.
Yeah, but I would say, and other regions are like this as well, that I would say that companies in Japan like to work with companies in Japan. There, I think that's true. I think there's a preference there, right? I'm not saying that's right or it's wrong, but I'm saying that's strong there, right? Yeah. And so with the same energy that I would be trying to convince people to go to Japan for the reasons we've been talking about for the last 45 minutes, I would say consider other regions. If you're in Japan, consider.
Yeah, no, you're totally right.
Yeah. Again, I don't think Japan's unique in that. I think there are some, even in the States, there are some regions they just like to work with this people from this region.
Well, I mean, if you can do it locally, I mean, yeah. I think you're right in that the Japanese companies, they kind of feel obligated to go outside or else they can't survive. They kind of feel pushed by the circumstances rather than, I want to go out to, XYZ country because I love it there, or I love doing business with the Americans or the Europeans or whatever. It's a lot, like doing everything in English. Traveling long distances, much more expensive. Doing business outside of Japan. All these are obviously obstacles to that. If you can, be self-sufficient, why not?
Right. Yeah. I mean, but I think just like I work for a solutions organization. Like maybe an FSP is not for everybody. Maybe a full service project's not for everybody. So you need to take the circumstances of what fits for you. And I would say that if I was a pharmaceutical company, I would give a long look at, like, does Japan make sense for us from a commercialization perspective, from a patient perspective, from a quality perspective, from a financial incentive perspective. I would dial that in my thinking. And if you're not, I think you're going to get a little bit behind because there is a lot of inertia. And this is I think the catalyst it's coming.
Definitely. And it goes both ways. The Japanese government is pushing a lot for Japanese companies to go out, and they're putting, lots of programs, private and public, so that momentum is building, and I can definitely see, in the year 2026 going to be a big year. I hope. And I'll be at JP Morgan, and meeting folks and kicking off the year with new friendships, new networks, and then see what 2026 brings us. Any thoughts on 2026?
Oh, I think it's going to be great for everybody. All boats rise situation. I think
Yeah.
I think it's time. I think overall the last several years it's probably not a surprise that the market as overall has been a little bit down, right? But
Mhm.
we're starting to see signs of that coming back there
Yeah.
with hiring and funding and decisions being made and just market over. I think that even when people say, well, we don't have any money to run our trials, now they have the money, but that money takes time to trickle through. And
Yeah.
so, it just takes a little bit of time, but we're definitely seeing more than signs. It's starting to get kind of energies starting. So,
That's good. That's good. Where will you be next year? And any plans for big events? Are you going to go to that scope in
yeah,
Orlando? Was it? Yeah.
yeah. So it's typically that first or second week in February in Orlando. We've gone to scope myself, and then as an organization, maybe the past 5 or 6 years, it's really a
Mhm.
strong meeting. It's really strong. You get to meet some good scientists, some investment community, a lot around patient centricity, patient enrollment, innovation, these type things. I would. There's several good meetings everywhere, but if you haven't given Scope a chance, I absolutely would give it a try.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm looking at it, but it's prices and whatnot. Yeah,
Well, it costs
it's
money
all
to make
out of
money.
pocket.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's what investment is about.
yeah,
But will I make money?
yeah.
That's the thing. All right. So, Ibrahim, do you have any other
No, this has
final
been.
thoughts,
I think this is great.
questions, and
Today, I think we should try to not keep our guests too long, like we always go over an hour lately.
it's the first trip, though. I want to know about
No,
his
I know.
work related stuff. Because
Definitely.
my friend in Japan, head of Advanced Clinical Japan,
Yeah.
is called his name is Makoto, and I think Makoto took Stacey around to some lots
I,
of places to see and
Oh yeah.
to
what was
My
your
favorite.
favorite experience then?
Well, besides the baseball game, going
Yeah,
down to Inashima, that island
yeah.
there,
I
walking
love that
around
island as
that.
well.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a cloudy day, so only saw the
Yeah,
outline of Mount Fuji, but that was just incredible there, and visited
yeah.
several shrines and temples. That was really really cool.
It's
Yeah,
my favorite
Inashima.
spot as well. Yeah, Enoshima, right next to Kamakura. Yeah,
Yep, yep.
very
Yeah, so
nice.
we hit Kamakura first, and then went over there. So
Yeah,
it was great, and who doesn't like a good bullet train? I mean, come on, but that was fun to do too.
exactly.
indeed,
And we ask this
indeed.
of every guest, but what was your most embarrassing experience in Japan?
Oh my, I don't know. You really ask this each time
Yeah,
there? Yeah. I'll answer it for you if you want to know
it's a
the
new
answer. Is
it's
that
a new tradition from today.
new tradition from today there?
Yeah,
Um, having no clue how to use a bidet. Yeah.
right.
So I didn't even mess with it. I didn't even mess with it there. So
That always makes me think of that Simpsons episode where they go to Japan and then they see the little fountain in the toilet.
yeah.
Well, I've had some bidet issues trying to help my daughter in Japan
Okay.
use the bidet, and she moved,
Oh
and it
no.
she's
No.
I had a face wash
There you go.
situation. That was an unpleasant experience.
That's
And this
funny.
is water.
All right. Well, you're gonna Tetsu, you're gonna have to cut that part out of this little thing here that we're doing. Or something. I don't know.
This is life, and this
Oh.
it's eternalized
Okay.
on LinkedIn and on YouTube.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, good. Maybe I'll get some instructions on how to use some bidets moving forward.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Stacy, for this enriching, discussion on Japan, the professional part and the non-professional part, and hope to see you in Japan again. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There's there's a lot of momentum. I'm very thankful that I went. I met wonderful people personally and professionally. I think there's a lot of positive things going on, and I hope it continues to grow. I really think it will.
That's great. It will. It will. We're going to make it grow, right, Ibrahim?
Yeah, we are. That's our mission.
There you go. All right. So for those watching now or on the recording, thank you very much for your interest in BioBridge, Bio Japan. And please follow us and continue to help us bridge the gap between Japan and the rest of the world. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again next time. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Stacey.
Mm-hmm.